If you have a classic Porsche or a collectible car or an exotic car and you try to sell it on BAT, that's Bring a Trailer, are you just going to wind up being stuck with it? We're going to answer that question. This is a new episode of Bid Nerds, and we have all new auction predictions. The bidding starts now. Bid Nerds is your daily YouTube car game show where we predict the online auction results of the most interesting cars on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, Haggerty Marketplace, and more. It's just like the Price is Right game show. Play along and see if you can beat the nerds. Yeah, see if you can beat the nerds. Everyone can beat the nerds because the nerd herd knows how to do it. My name is John Polnick. We are coming to you live on the YouTube machine from downtown Las Vegas in the downtown Las Vegas Container Park. My name is John Polnick. I am coming to you live with my partner, Michael Deeb. Where's he at? If I can get him on the little clicky thing.
I'm over here.
Oh, man, the machine is going a little funny here. We hear a bunch of rumbling in the background. That's our special guest. Wait till you hear who we have as a special guest. How you doing, Michael Deeb?
I'm doing amazing, JP. It is, it's a great day here in California.
Yippee-ki-yay. Well, I know you're excited to get right to our guest. He's fidgeting with his camera, and it's kind of fun to watch him on the other screen here, but I'm just going to, look, I don't even know if I need to, this is Pete Stout from 000 Magazine. Can you believe he agreed to come on to this show if I can figure out?
What's up, gentlemen?
Look at that. That's not him.
Look.
There he is, right here. Boom.
There he is. Oh, nice.
Oh, the print guy caught on camera and audio.
Boom.
Yeah. Are you at headquarters? Are you at home? Or are you at the office?
I'm at the dining room table.
Oh, nice. Looks like a garage door behind you. I love it.
It's a school night, and it is, in fact, a garage door in the dining table. There's two of them.
I do like a garage door in a private home. I love the idea of I'd love to do a garage door in my place that opened up that big, but I'm 16 floors up, so it might be a problem. I might I'm not very bright, so I might just wind up falling out. But hey, very, very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah, tell us quickly for the 2 or 3 people in our audience that may not know what 000 is. What is 000?
Well, it's kind of like Spinal Tap for car magazines. It happens to be focused on Porsche. A friend and I started this in 2000. I got to fix this. Sorry. We started this in 2016, and it's a quarterly focused on Porsche, about 260 pages an issue, weighs about 3 pounds, almost no advertising. It's certainly Spinal Tap for car magazine editors, and we're fortunate to work with a fun group of people who do sort of wild research into crazy things, and we publish things like 30-page stories on headlights.
That's awesome.
And I didn't think I was that interested in headlights, even if I liked them. And so, we'll dig in 60 pages on a car is not uncommon for us. So it's kind of, it's off the deep end for sure. And after doing 20-something years of car magazines, wanted to try something a little bit more in depth, a little bit different.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I mean, you guys have kind of become the ultimate Porsche place to go when it comes to, the pounds of magazine. That's I can't even, that's as big as a phone book. Yeah. That's a lot of Porsche.
Yeah, the strangest moment probably came about a year or two in. We got a call from someone's assistant who was asking if we could fix a magazine. And we asked for pics, and we ended up, it was an S copy, so it was hardbound. Yeah. And there was some damage to one corner in shipping or wherever. And so I never figured we'd be in the business of repairing magazines when we started 000. But there we were. We said, okay, we'll send you a call tag and we'll get it rebuilt.
Calling it a magazine is almost doing it a disservice, right? It's more like a periodical. These don't wind up on tables in the waiting room. They wind up on shelves behind the executive's desk. Is that fair?
Yeah. We kind of, in the early days, we talked about quarterly or journal or any of these things. in the end, we called it a magazine because that's what we grew up on. Alex
Right.
and I, Alex Pilevsky, the co-founder, and I, we grew up on car magazines. And when we finally met working at a car magazine after college, we realized we quickly had a friendship in common and basically a childhood in common, thanks to Car and Driver and a bunch of other car magazines we both read in parallel in different parts of the state. And so magazine is what we know and what we do. And we also called it a magazine to keep it a little bit down to earth. You know, we felt that Journal and Quarterly wasn't quite where we wanted to be at, even though we knew we were shooting high. So that was kind of the idea.
Well done.
All right. Well, let's hear. Sorry, guys. I'm pushing on some buttons while we're doing all the things here. That's what you got to do when you're kind of hosting the show and also being a button
Producing.
pusher. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, Pete, you know all about Porsches. This show, we talk about a lot of Porsches. We make a lot of predictions about Porsche auctions on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, P-Car Market, and more. We have some predictions to make tonight, and so we can't wait to hear your insight on those cars that we've picked just for you. But we do have cars that we made predictions on the last episode. And the one thing that we do on this show, as much as we don't know what we're talking about, we like to prove that fact by going back to the last show and showing you just how bad at this we are. So we'll give you a shot to see if you are any better at it than us on the cars that we made predictions on the last episode. But before we get to those predictions from the last episode, just real quick, we want to shout out to our good friends at Gaudin Porsche and Gaudin Classic of Las Vegas. If you need parts for your classic Porsche, if you need a classic Porsche, they are the place to go to. You don't need to be in Las Vegas. You just give them a call. They know who we are. Tell them what parts you want. Tell them the Bid Nerd sent you, and maybe they'll know who we are. That's a whole other story. But give our friends at Gaudin Classic and Gaudin Porsche of Las Vegas a call. And also, if you are wondering what time it is, if you have a fine Swiss watch and you're like, you know what? It doesn't work as well as it used to. I can't get my watch on the damn screen. And you know, you need to get that thing serviced. Send it up to Idaho, our good friends at Our Smith's Fine Swiss Repair. Anthony will take your fine Swiss watch and, you know, I don't even know how to describe it. He'll fix it up. He'll service it. He'll tune it. He'll do those things. It's a machine, right? It's a fine Swiss watch machine. He'll get it serviced, put it in a box, send it back to you, be good as new. And, you know, heck, if you don't have a fine Swiss watch and you want one, Anthony can get you hooked up. Our Smiths in Idaho. Look them up at oursmiths.com. Okay, time to get to our last predictions. Michael D., what was the first car on the list from the last episode?
All right, so Anthony from Our Smiths selected and submitted for us this 1978 Porsche 928. This is a car that has been owned by its current custodian for the last 34 years. It's a rest of the world example. So 78 being the first year of the 928, the North American cars made about 20 horsepower less. This is the European or the rest of the world example. Our car is on Bring a Trailer and located in Chatham, Ontario, Canada, showing 289,000 kilometers, which is about 180,000 miles on the odometer. The motor is non-running. The motor failed 24 years ago, and this car has been sitting for the last 2.5 decades. The owner has decided to give up on this project. They pushed it into the sunlight, took some photos of it, slapped it on BAT, and Anthony thought this might be a cool car for us to examine, and I struggle to see the merit left in this car because it's a non-running project and it's not even on the ground in the United States. And it's super high mileage to begin with. Now, don't get me wrong. It is the first year of the 928. This car did come with the dark blue and white Pasha interior. So there are some cool factors here, but you got to wonder by the time you import it, by the time you get the motor running, by the time you give the rest of this car some love, is there any equity in it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? With that in mind, I started the bidding at $6,500, and I found myself as being alone at the top. JP came in at $3,000, wait for it, $928, and Wade, who was with us in studio on Sunday, came in underneath JP at just $3,300. It's worth noting that Anthony, who submitted the card to us, didn't even bid as high as I would. he said he would look at the car, but likely be done with it once it got into the $4,000 range. So, Pete, we're going to throw you into the fire without knowing anything else about this car, but knowing that it's non-running in Canada on BAT, no reserve. I bid high at 6,500. Wade bid low at 3,300. Where do you think the hammer fell on this poor, in need of a lot of attention, and lonely and cold in Canada 928, first year 928? Where do you think the hammer fell on that car?
Well, I gotta love you for this, Michael D, because people ask me, and I am the last person for values.
Yeah.
I'm focused on the driving and the fun of things.
Right.
The dollars usually chase me away, so I'm gonna go ahead and also I will say I bought a car like this. I had a 928 that I bought for $600 that had been abandoned as a project, and I couldn't.
What year was that?
It was an 83 or 84 competition package, and I just couldn't. It was going to get parted out, and so I bought it to try to save it and turn it into an off-road or like a fire road exploration vehicle. I paid $600, but I also know we're talking about bring a trailer, so I'm going. I'll 9x it for $4,500.
$4,500. That's not a bad guess.
D, before you let him like land on that number, do you remember where it was when we made our prediction?
It was below $3,000.
It was below $3,000.
Yeah, because Wade bid $3,300, so it was at like $2,900 or $3,000 even. And Wade, I think it was at like $3,100, and Wade gave it like $200 more at $3,300.
Gotcha. All right. So, well, let us know what happened with this thing.
So much to my chagrin, because I thought when everybody gave their bids and we got the bids from the herd, Pete, all the bids came in around $3,000-$4,000, and I was up there at 6,500. I thought, man, I'm probably going to look stupid about this one, except that it was running no reserve, and somebody had to have it. The hammer fell at $9,100 where it sold on 27 bids. So, JP, my knee-jerk reaction to this is the person who bought it didn't notice it was in Canada, because you still have to import this thing. And by the time you pay the transport and the tariffs and then start to undress this thing and put it back together correctly, I just think you're going to be buried in it. I don't know that there's anything left in this car. Even if you just were happy driving a ratty 928 and you just wanted to get it mechanically sorted, I still think you're underwater in this car. JP, your thoughts? $9,100 for a non-running 928 with like nearly 300,000 kilometers sitting in Ontario, Canada. What is going on?
No, I got to pass this on to our guest here really quick. But you said that the person didn't realize it was in Canada. Like, no. The person thought it was in Canadian dollars or Canadian maple dollars or monopoly money. Pete Stout, what do you think of this result? What is going on?
It's got to be a bring a trailer result. I mean, what I will say is you start to say, okay, is there a counter logic here where the car's been off the road for 24 years against other 928s that have been on the road for 24 years. So whatever life it lived up to that point froze at that point. And it's tempting to say, oh, that's back in the 90s. Maybe it's a good car. But no, that's the year 2000. And if you start to look at this car, you wonder what was its life from 78 to 2000. I happen to really love the early 928s. I guess I'm an odd one out. I really dig the two-valve cars, and the lighter and simpler, the better. Mm-hmm. But yeah, $9,000. I mean, looking at these pictures, I can easily envision spending $90,000 to get this car up to a high standard. And who's going to do that? I mean, at this time, who is going to do that? What was the mileage on the chassis?
Known. It was, here we go. 289,000 kilometers, which is about 179,000 miles.
I can't see paying. As somebody who bought a 928 that was non-running for $600, and wasn't that many. It wasn't 24 years ago. It was like 10 years ago. I'm having a tough time. And I got all my money back out when it came time. My wife was delighted when I lost the half hanger that it was sitting in. So I think I sold it for $600 too. So that's a tough one at $9,000. I mean, I think getting it running, realistically, you're talking about even if you're doing all the work, 10 to 20, and probably a lot more.
Probably it's been sitting for 2.5 decades, and the motor blew up when it let go. So you've got an engine rebuild, and then your brakes and your you got to redo the entire brake system, all your rubber bushings and everything. The suspension's probably shot. The tires are flat spotted. I mean, don't get me started. This car needs everything, Pete.
Well,
And none of you guys have mentioned the electricals on this thing. I mean, how many mice and gerbils and whatever critters have gotten into this thing? I mean, mammoths, whatever they have crawling around in Canada. I mean, the wiring loom alone on this thing has got to be $10,000 if you can even find one. Our friend Anthony.
Have you guys ever opened up? Have you guys opened up the circuit board on a 928 in the passenger footwell?
No.
Oh, you're inexperienced. That's surprising. I figure you guys would be ahead of me on that one.
Pete, this is a family show. We're not trying to scare the kids. What are you doing talking about doing that? Oh my gosh, that sounds terrifying.
I worked with a certain ad director at Excellence Magazine for about 15 years, and he asked me to. He figured out that I was doing car stereo badly in high school, and he asked me to install a stereo in his 920 S4, and I said, okay, sure. And I took it home, and if you get the passenger footwell carpeting down, there's this, like, you're confronted with this Rocky and Bullwinkle. It's huge. It's this huge fuse panel / relay board. And in the middle of it, there's just this little box with a little red LED, and it says test. And you can plug in things to see if they're good. And I thought, if you've got an onboard testing facility for things, that is a bad sign.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know, but one of the weak points of those cars is that when the windshield seals fail, all the water goes down to where the passenger footwell, where that board is located. So those cars are not for the faint of heart.
No,
I do love them, but one that's been dead for nearly a quarter of a century.
Yeah. Pass.
It was driven hard, put away wet, as they say. And, everybody keeps saying in the comments here that, they're going parts. It's like, the parts were all worn out when this thing died 20 years ago. What do you think you're going to pull off of this thing that's any good? And the amount of labor and effort it would take to get whatever part out of this thing that you think is going to, somehow recover your investment on this. This just seems bonkers to me.
There's a lot of unknowns in that car. And I think Deep said it well when you're doing everything, all the hoses, master cylinder, it's a total recommission. And then there's whatever sidelined it. It said the engine's bad.
Yeah. Engine gave out and they parked it. That was it. So it didn't run when parked, and parked was 24 years ago. And it's in Canada.
And by the way, so the co-founder of 000 bought an early 928 and still has it, loves it. He was kind of ahead of the curve on it. 79, great car. But when he got it, the cylinder heads had to be completely rebuilt due to something none of us really think about. The aluminum heads had corroded from sitting.
Oh,
so
my God.
They had to be welded up and polished and cleaned. And so what do you think these heads are looking like? Because they haven't had coolant through them in how long?
Yeah. Well, man.
Pete, I have an equation that I use when I'm kind of like trying to decide whether or not I should buy an old car. And I talked about it in the last episode, but since you're here, I'd love to get your opinion on this. I feel like there's three vectors that you got to kind of look at. One, you've got the aesthetics, obviously. Then 2, you've got the mechanical side of the vehicle. And then 3 is the value, right? So your equation winds up being this thing. You've got these 3 main things that you got to look at. And I think if you're going to say yes to a car, you have to have at least 2 out of those 3. And this car, to me, has 000. Like all the zeros. It's all zeros all the time. I put that together right when I was saying it. I can't believe how clever I am. What do you think of that?
I've never thought about that. In that perspective, I've never thought about 000 as a car to run from. But in this case, I'm going to give it a 1. Like, the visuals are good. Silver early car, Porsche stick is a desirable car. And what I would say is, for someone with a much longer window than mine, and I'm not that old, I don't know what that window is, But is this the current 65 or 66 911 of 20 or 30 or 40 years ago? Maybe you grab it and pickle it because it is a first year 928. And I don't know if
Mhm.
you've driven a first year 928. I did many years ago, and I was blown away by how fun it was to drive, how great it
Mhm.
sounded. Like those early 928s are really special in my book, and it has a really interesting moment in Porsche history, that car, and what could have been, as well as what it was, which was, remember, that 78 928 won European Car of the Year uh, from all of the various motoring publications. And when I drove an early one, I realized why. Those stick
Mhm.
shift early 928s are fabulous to drive. And at some point, are those going to be six-figure cars? At what point? And so I guess
Mhm.
there's a lot of question marks around this one. But there is something to be said for a car that ended up getting parked. Now, look, this one's mileage is big and the needs are big. So there's some
Mhm.
people who buy these cars up and they get to work slowly, but they know that the values would catch up.
Well,
That's
someone bet that you're right and bet big because they bet the
Maybe.
farm on it at 9 grand plus. Our good friend Anthony Vieira, owner of Ours Smiths, he is in the chat. Pete, we have what we call the nerd herd over here. We got all the folks who are hanging out watching us live, and there's a bunch of them tonight. Everyone I think is here to see you, probably not us.
yeah.
They're pretty sick of us.
Doubtful.
But
Doubtful.
yeah, I think here's the thing: you're as the publisher of a magazine, you're a journalist. I want to say maybe do you have some investigative journalism in your history? Can you maybe launch an investigation and find out what the hell this person was actually thinking, who this person that spent 9 grand on this car was? Do like a
Yeah, it could have been that. If I were still at Panorama or Excellence, it would probably be pretty interesting to get into the psychology of it. I see Anthony, commenting on some of the parts,
Yeah.
in a couple places, and there may be, again, never underestimate the specialists or the niche markets within Porsche or elsewhere.
Yeah.
When Alex got his 928 and got the bad news about the cylinder heads, which was not a small cost, and the car was, he was ahead of the market, but it was still really expensive at the time. That car, it was a really good silver early car with Pasha and a 5-speed like this car. And he's, okay, I won the auction. I think it was eBay. And, did I pay too much? And I was like, how much did you pay? And, well, you're going to keep it, it'll probably be all right. And then the cylinder head thing came down. But Greg Brown, who's one of the two best known experts on these cars at the time, looked over the car, and he said, there's this part and this part and this part and this part on the bottom of this car that's perfect, and you cannot get them. So if that's Greg Brown, one of the two best specialists on these cars, saying there's all these parts that you got in this auction with this car that I can't replace, and he can't replace them. Maybe somebody who's quite savvy saw that this car had a lot. So what Anthony's getting at might be spot on. There might be somebody who's saying that car's worth it for the parts. There's a bunch of things that I can get on that car. Maybe they looked through all the photos and said, I can make up the 9 grand with that, and it comes in one package.
Yeah. There you go.
For sure. All right, what do you guys think of the results of this Porsche 928? Needed a lot of love. Is this a gold mine in silver, or is this just a bucket of sorrow? Let us know in the comments below. And we are going to move on to the next car so we can get to some new predictions. But real quick, if you guys are in the chat, if you're new to the chat, if you're new to the Nerd Herd, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Why don't you hit the subscribe, like, and notification button right now if you haven't done that already. Hit the little thumbs up. That helps us a lot. We want to spread the word and grow the herd. Michael D., what was the next car on the list?
All right, JP. On Cars and Bids, we found this homologation special, a 2006 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 9 RS spec. This car has just 11,700 miles from new and was running on Cars and Bids out of Blaine, Washington. Listen, these cars were really hot, and they started a little horsepower war with Subaru when they came out. And every new year, these cars got a little better suspension, a little better aero, tiny bit of horsepower, better differentials, yada, yada, yada. The list went on and on. We were the winners because we kept getting to buy these really cool cars. But finding one today that hasn't been driven the snot out of, modified, high miles, accidents, or young owned is becoming more and more increasingly difficult to do. So here is one of the best of the Lancer Evolution specs with the Recaros, the Brembos, the BBS wheels, and of course, all that horsepower, like 300 horsepower. Spectacularly low miles and really nice condition. We wondered how well it would do on Cars and Bids on Doug DeMiro's site. So again, I was the high bidder, Pete. I came in at $49,000, where I assumed it would sell. And then JP took the under at $42,463. And then Wade, who was in the studio, split the difference between us, but tucked it up closer to me at $47,777. Very obscure bids. None of these guys know how to round off. Putting you on the spot once again, Pete Stout, a super low mile Lancer Evolution 9, all stock, not modified, not hit, clean Carfax on Cars and Bids this time. Where do you think the hammer fell on this car when it closed just a couple days ago?
Why do I feel like I'm playing the penny slots as a non?
You are. You are. Yeah, this is the Price is Right for cars on Bring a Trailer, basically.
I'm going to apply about as much. I'm going to apply about as much skill as I might with the penny slots, and I'm going to go high on this one. I'm going to go 52,000, and the reason for that is these cars. I had a friend who had one 997 GT2 and this for a two-car solution, and they're really hard to find, as you said. You know, in good condition like this car. This car looks like it's been cared for, hasn't been modded. I don't mind modded, but there's a certain group of buyers for these cars where they're looking for these cars and they're buying out of nostalgia. They couldn't get them when they were new, or they dreamed about them when they were new. So these cars have really come into their own. So I'm gonna, and it really looks like a great example. I tested these when they were new for Sports Car International, and they are a lot of fun. I was an STI guy, but I understood the appeal for these, and the handling is fantastic. I'm going to go a little higher than Michael and go for 52. Let's see what happens.
All right, so Pete wins this one, but here's where it gets interesting. The hammer fell at $55,500, where it failed to sell on just 27 bids. So my question to you right off the bat, Pete Stout, is if the guy turned down 55, where on earth did Cars and Bids agree to set the reserve? Because they couldn't even make up the delta to get this car across the finishing line. I'm guessing the reserve price was like $59,000 or $60,000.
Yeah, I was going to say it has to be 60s.
Yeah,
and what that
right.
tells you is somebody, you know, again, it gets back to the nostalgia and somebody. I'm surprised they set the reserve that high, but I can't claim to be a Lancer market expert. So again, there's people in that group. My friend Chris, he said that was a really hard car to find. When he finally let go of it, you know, I'd never asked him what he sold it for, but they are apparently very, very hard to find in this kind of condition, unchanged, unmodded. Now maybe it's been changed back, but it doesn't have the markings of that kind of car. This looks like it's been really well preserved.
Yeah. Looks like somebody had some fun with it.
It's got to be 60s. If they can't make up the delta, it must be 60s. Maybe more.
Yeah.
I just love that it has roll-up windows. That's all I care about. That's the one thing that appeals to me the most. But, you know, again, I'm simple. I can't figure out buttons.
Slick top with winders, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Was it roll-up front and rear? It looked like it.
Yes. Yeah. All the way around. All right, guys, we're going to move on from that one. What do you guys think of the results of this little Lancer? Is this the car for a young person who can't afford insurance on an actual sports car? Or is this the nostalgia play that Pete says? I think he's right. I think this is all nostalgia, but I just can't believe they didn't take the money and run. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. What was the next car on the list, Michael Deep?
All right, Pete, a little bit of backstory on this one. I was born and raised in San Francisco. I don't know what a truck is. My partner, JP, is from the lakes outside of Seattle, where guys, you know, who had trucks, that was a way of life. So I think a Macan is a truck. JP laughs at that and you know, tells me what a bro dozer is. JP selected for us on Bring a Trailer a 2024 INEOS Grenadier. Are you familiar with these, Pete?
Now y'all are just being mean.
Yeah. Okay. So I never heard
this
of it
is
either.
impressive.
So INEOS is an investment company based in London. They also sponsor. They have their own professional cycling team to take on things like the Tour de France. But now they have identified a spot in the marketplace where an inexpensive all-terrain, overland vehicle could be profitable. And so INEOS has gone ahead and produced their own Land Rover Discovery, in their words, an exact replica, although it's not quite an exact replica, but it's obviously very evocative of a Land Rover, from the 60s, and a Defender type car, right? And then they enlisted a BMW drivetrain. So this car is for sale on the ground in the United States, and you can get it with a BMW. Let me read it to you real quick. It is the turbocharged 3-liter inline six that's making like just under 400 horsepower and just under 400 pound-foot of torque. In Europe, you can get this car with a 6-cylinder BMW diesel engine, which is really cool. But this car is beautiful on the ground, just 180 miles, and it's located in Miami, Florida, and of course it's on Bring a Trailer. Now here's where it gets really interesting. This car was sold brand new just a little while ago. It's got not even a tank of gas in it, and they brought it back to market. We figured out that the MSRP on this car was in the low 70s. So with tax and license out the door, this car was around $80,000. They tried to sell it earlier on P-Car Market, and it failed to make the market like $75,000. So they're basically bringing it back to market, but this time on Bring a Trailer. Not knowing anything about this car, Pete, I started the bidding at $70,000, citing that the failure to sell on P-Car Market at 75 below MSRP would be its own worst comparable sale, because I've never heard of the car. JP said, you're out of your mind. The P-Car Market exercise, even though it didn't sell, is bringing attention to this new brand, and the car would do really well on here. JP took a strong over at $85,000. Wade kind of came in right where the guy's investment would be paid off. Wade said $78,000, splitting the difference between the three of us. So, not knowing anything about this car, you are perfectly qualified to guess what happened on Bring a Trailer just a couple days ago. Where do you think the bidding stopped when the hammer fell?
My first question is, can I have the Lancer instead?
Yes, you can. You can. And you'd save $30,000.
I just we need to go back to that shifter, because that shifter alone is terrifying. I don't know if we can get there easily.
Yeah, it's got the BMW shifter. You're right.
Oh, yeah, that shifter. I'm going to go with $5,000
for the shifter.
Car or truck or whatever you want to call that thing.
Not impressed.
That's enough alone. And then you go to the. I mean, what I see with this thing is I see occasional moments of finished brilliance, like the armrests, and then I see that. And it looks like it's out of a Cessna from the 70s.
I do believe that was the point, right?
Yeah.
I get that, but I am terrified. Like dealer support.
That's the first thing I said.
Quality, and again, with that shifter connected, I'm going low on this one. In reality, I'll go ahead and put in at let's see, I put in 5. Let's I'll 5x it to be kind of say 25.
All right.
Even though it I get that it's not your jam. But I mean, realistically, it's a brand new vehicle with like no miles. You can't get these, and a lot of people ordered them and are waiting for them. Kind of like Rivian or something like that, which is certainly something that I don't want. I'm normally we don't give nerds a chance to kind of second guess themselves, but I kind of feel like I need to like nudge you a little bit.
Okay.
Like, I mean, let's be realistic here. I get that you think it's worth 25 to you.
So you're suggesting there are other people who have ordered this and are waiting for one.
There are lots of people. Well, before you bid, do you like Land Rover Defenders?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
You do, but this you don't. You're like, what about the new Defender? What's your opinion of the brand new Defender?
No.
I mean, that's.
I have a lot of friends who I respect who like the new Defender, but I'm all about the older Defender or the original, like the 88-inch. If I see an 88-inch, I can't get my eyes off it. Or a 110. I'm great with any of those, 90, whatever. This thing doesn't seem like those, and it doesn't seem like the new Defender either.
I mean, unlike it is, and I'm with you on that gear shift lever. That's one of those things that it's like they did all this development, all these switch gear and all this stuff, yet they didn't get around to like changing that one thing that would have made the interior look pretty good. All those like you can literally hose this thing out. Like it's all rubberized and everything's like water resistant. It's got triple lockers, center locker. I mean, it is a legit off-road vehicle. But all that said, I guess we'll give you one more shot.
You're looking for I'll grant that my off-road experience is limited to Jeeps on the Rubicon and the Chilean Altitude 992s. So pretty
limited to just those two things.
But the thing I kind of think you want when you go off-road, some Cayenne off-roading too, a little bit of, and once in a Boxster, which is a whole other story. It actually made it where the Cayenne had problems with the tires. So I think though that when you go off-road, don't you want something that inspires great confidence in the reliability? That shifter and the fact that this is this the Mercor XR4 Ti of off-roaders? I had one of those, and I carried a full set of hoses with me at all times. And I really mean that. I needed the full set of hoses several times. This thing does not inspire confidence, but based on your intel that there are people waiting for one of these, and I'll just go ahead and grant that. It seems like a tough sell for me, but I'll go ahead and spot it at 60.
60. All right. There's a realistic number. All right. I'm trying to get him in here. All right. Michael D, what were the actual results of this Grenade? Right. I mean, Grenadier or whatever the heck it is.
So what's interesting is that they turned down $75,000 on PCAR Market just a little while ago. Wade discovered that when we covered the car a couple days ago. It hammered on Bring a Trailer at just $72,000, where it's sold on 19 bids. So JP, what do you think happened on the guys on the way to meeting reserve on BAT? First of all, the reserve BAT must have been realistic based on the fact that again it was its own worst comp on PCAR Market. But the guy had to agree to it to list it, and it only made 72, $3,000 less than it made just a couple weeks ago on PCAR Market. He took it. Did the shifter drive him nuts, or did he just want to get off the car? Because he certainly didn't sell it for profit, like I think we all would have naturally assumed, knowing there was a waiting list when he first brought it to market. But that's not what happened here. This guy didn't put a tank of gas in this car, and he got off it and probably lost $8,000.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that most of these orders, most of the people that wanted one of these and put their name on a list, maybe signed a check, probably did it back in 2022, 2023, when everybody in the world had a bunch of money and money was free, and people were speculating on anything that was even remotely cool. And now that these things are actually starting to hit the ground, because I don't think there's many of them here yet, the reality is that those people that put their name on that list may not be able to actually afford them because they can't get the loan that they could have gotten 2 years ago when they ordered it. They could have bought that money for 2% or whatever, or 3%, and now it's going to cost them 10 or 15%. That's $70,000 is a pretty darn good number for a vehicle like this. Putting put aside whether or not you like it or not, if you are considering something like a Defender or, a Jeep Gladiator with the big engine in it or something like that, or a G-Wagon for that matter, you're looking at 6 figures plus, right? So $70,000 is like to come into this market with this incredible off-road vehicle way under there. I think it was a good strategy when money was cheap, but now that it's not, on top of that, I don't think anybody's even heard of these. I hadn't even heard of these things, and I really like this stuff. It turns out Rami did put his name on a list for one of these, and I also think the color.
He's not buying it.
Yeah, he would if if they called him up. He's buying it. He loves it. He loves
wow.
it.
I mean, it sounds like take the money and run at the hammer price. Cut losses. And then from the other side, I mean, there's always going to be a market for things where people say, what's that?
Yeah.
Where you see a Nissan Patrol that's been imported or something that's, unusual. And I can see where that's going to be a driver for somebody where they just got to have it because nobody else does. There's always going to be a market. I guess I work on Porsche stuff. I guess I like some reasonable assurance that the thing will work when I need it to. And that limits me and keeps me from a lot of things I dig. There's a lot of cars out there that I dig for the weird factor. I mean, I'm a 914 guy, so I'm easily pot shottable. But this one, when it gets into utility, I want utility. Now I can see somebody else says it gets into utility, and I want to show up in something that nobody else has seen and turns heads, and this kind of vehicle does that.
Sure would have been nice if it had 3 pedals, because that would definitely make you feel a little bit better about taking that out in the middle of nowhere. You need a helicopter to come and get that thing out of the outback. All right, what do you guys think of the results of this INEOS Grenadier? Let us know in the comments below, and we will be right back with Pete Stout from 000 Magazine. We're going to do something we don't usually do. All the remaining predictions will be Porsches. All Porsches all the time. Just repeat.
Yep.
We will
Pandering to the host.
Right back if I can find the darn commercial. Here it is. Hey guys, I got to tell you about our friends Gaudin Porsche of Las Vegas and Gaudin Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you got to call our friend Steve at Gaudin. This guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Gaudin Porsche of Las Vegas. If you don't subscribe to Bid Nerds on YouTube right now, I'm going to shoot this 997. If you said, wait, that's a 996, you're a nerd. So subscribe to the new YouTube channel, Bid Nerds. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair. All right, we are back. Bid Nerds with brand new predictions. Thanks for sticking around. Nerd Herd, you rock. You guys are hanging out, and we're loving the comments tonight. Everyone's really getting into it. You guys really know how to make a show. If you've got questions for Pete Stout from 000 Magazine, put them in the comments. Maybe we'll get a chance to ask those questions of him, and maybe he'll even answer. All right, let's get to some predictions. I'm excited about the cars we've got on the list, Michael Deeb. This first one we've been talking about for a while, and I know you kind of have a personal connection to this one. What do we got?
Yeah, this is tough. So my good friend Sebastian, who Pete has met, is finally decided to sell his 1987 Porsche 911 Carrera. This car is a factory M491 and a factory M470. So the M491 is the turbo look package. This was because when they brought out the turbo look in '84, at that time, the 930 Turbo was no longer being sold in the United States, and Porsche wanted to spruce up the showrooms from just the sort of Carrera-hipped G bodies and brought the wide-bodied car with the Carrera engine in. Now, very few of the cars were brought in M491. We're talking in the dozens to, in some cases, like the '84 Coupe, they might have brought in a couple hundred of them. But the M470 by the numbers is a really rare package. And that's when you get the turbo wide body hips, the turbo suspension, and the turbo valve covers. But now you're going M470, no wings. So there's no front chin spoiler on this car and no factory T-tray wing on the back of this. Sebastian found this car from his neighbor in San Francisco. His neighbor bought the car brand new. from Porsche down in I think Redwood City, which was Carlson, I think, back in the day. And so that guy had the car for years and years and years. Sebastian moved into the neighborhood and would see the garage door open and go up and say hi to the guy and ask him if he would sell it. The guy would say no, year after year after year. Well, a couple of years ago, that guy called Sebastian. Sebastian bought the car, bought it for a song, has really gone through the car and spruced it up, and slight enhancements to the suspension. Everything is tuned and maintained. The air conditioning worked, the stereo works. He refinished the wheels. The car is in spectacular condition. Based out of San Francisco, now showing 71,000 original miles on the odometer. By the numbers, I can't remember. Sebastian kind of breaks it down for you, but there's probably 70 or 80 1987 G50 coupes, M491, and then I think M470. It's just like 9 of them, and it's probably like 1 or 2 in Grand Prix white. So by the numbers, this car ticks just about every collectible box there could possibly be for a G Series car. By the numbers, this is going to be rarer than an 89 Club Sport. It's going to be rarer than an RS America. It's fascinating when you break it down just how special this car actually is, and it's presented here in spectacular condition. I'm crying on the inside and the outside because Sebastian offered me the car for sale all last year, and I just couldn't make the timing work. But he can no longer wait for me to come around, and now he's selling it. Here it is on BAT in all its glory. JP, what do you think? You've seen this car in the flesh. You've met Sebastian in person. What do you think?
I think you should have hired me to make a film for it, so it would definitely bring more money. But that's just I'm just joking around here. This car is beautiful. I have had the good fortune of seeing this thing drive down the road. The pictures don't do it justice. This car really is spectacular. I love the concept that Porsche had with the whole M491 idea. Bring the bigger hips on the car, and this one really is the way that I would have spec'd the car out back in '87 if I had the money in high school. Without that wing, I've never liked a big wing on the back of any Porsche, and even the modern Porsches, I'm just not a wing fan. And I think something about that rear line, the roof line sloping all the way down with those wide hips. This car really is the perfect spec. I love what he did with the interior. White on black, just really simple, clean. This car is spectacular. I want to own it. Pete, what do you think of this car?
So those cars are actually really interesting from a different perspective. The wing delete cars, as some would say, is immediately obvious. What a lot of people miss is that front spoiler is actually different from the standard. So that's the same front spoiler underneath that front bumper as the 89 Speedsters that we got here in the US with the wide body. And so that spoiler actually caught me out, that front valance, I guess you should call it, with the 2 sort of forward-facing receptacles for the fog lights and then the indent in the center. I was at EAS here in Marin years ago, and there was a silver Speedster up on a not a high rack, but kind of eye level. And I was looking at it I was like, oh, this is a nice Speedster. And the guy said, it's not a Speedster. And I looked again and I realized, oh yeah, it's got a body color windshield frame and a real top. And so it was one of these cars, but as a cabrio. But the real was Speedster because of the front end. And, these cars are very interesting. As you said earlier, 87, so it's got the things that the enthusiasts tend to be looking for, G50. It's an impact bumper car. It's a simple, relatively simple light car. A lot of people miss the fact that these Turbolook cars also got Turbolook suspension and brakes, which is a really nice upgrade. So these cars are indeed highly desirable. Some people are going to want that turbo tail and the black front valance, or the body color valance, but the lip spoiler. So here's a really good photo to see that different front valance that a lot of people have missed on these cars with the spoiler deletes. This is a highly, highly desirable car, as someone said. I mean, taken in total for all the years, they're, from my research, not necessarily rarer than the US Club Sports. There's a lot of question marks. We did a story about the 3.2 Club Sports, and I think there's a lot of erroneous information out there. We did the best we could. I'm not sure I believe the numbers that have been shared on those Club Sport cars. And I think they're considerably rarer than the accepted numbers. We got into
Oh,
that
well.
at 000 and found that the problem is after a certain year, they're no longer separated by VIN. It's a build card situation. And so no one has the definitive answer at this time on those cars that I know of that we've been able to find. And a friend of the magazine asked a great question and said, you go to Porsche events and another car you mentioned, RS Americas, you see them all over the place. You used to see them at almost every enthusiast event. And they said, how many Club Sports do you see? And he wasn't talking about just North America, he was talking about worldwide. But nonetheless, you're getting into some of the rarest of the air-cooled cars, and many would argue these are some of the best of the air-cooled cars. The 3.2, they had things really, really well figured out ahead of the 964. This is just a couple of model years before that end. First year for G50, desirable color combo, white-black, Grand Prix white over black. I'd love to see sports seats in a car like this, but not every customer was after those, and there's a lot of people who love the way these drive and prefer them to turbos on back roads, and certainly from a maintenance perspective, they prefer them to turbos. So this is a very desirable car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, the fact that it doesn't have a turbo to me really appeals to me a lot because I do love a 930. I do love an air-cooled 911 turbo, but those are the ones you most often see on the side of the road that don't finish the drive. If you've ever been on like the Targa Baja or the Targa Carolina or, any of these classic Porsche drives, it's always the turbos that don't make it. That's a quote from our good friend Derek Whitaker, who owns the famous stupid car that is a super turbo car. I mean, I've been on the Targa Baja in a turbo that didn't make it. It's not fun. I will take the naturally aspirated car any day of the week. Big question is, what will this bring, Michael Deep?
All right. So JP, here's where the rubber meets the road, right? So our car closes tomorrow on Bring a Trailer. It's currently sitting at $130,000 on 18 bids. Now, just about the nicest comp for this car, it was a low mile granite green G50 M491 coupe that sold on P Car Market 2 years ago or over 2 years ago for $125,000. The trouble is the market is so radically different now that result doesn't really apply here. What we could sort of look at are some of the rare examples of the wide body, normally aspirated 964s that have done really well. We've seen a couple of the C4 wide bodies that have brought over 200,000 last year. Those cars have started to cool off below 200,000 now. And occasionally we've seen a 93 Jubilee car come on here, and some of those cars have gotten close to $200,000. This is not a 964, but it is actually, by the numbers, as a spoiler delete turbo look, rarer than those two cars, and there just hasn't been one that we've seen like this with this gearbox on Bring a Trailer. So at 130, I would tell you this: I was thinking this car would make about 150 or 160 when it first came on the market a week ago. But the fact that it's sitting at 130 now on 18 bids, it's getting really good action. Sebastian saw that somebody syndicated this auction listing in an article in either Chinese or Japanese and posted it on his listing. This car is getting international press and international love because of what an unusual occasion it is to see this car on here. So I am changing my bid from my original 150, 160, and I'm going all in on this car. I think it has a chance to touch $180,000. And if it does that, it will meet reserve and it will sell. JP, I'm putting all my chips into the middle. We haven't seen a car tick all these boxes, and this one presents well enough. So JP, I send it to you at 180 grand. I'm sure you'll take the under, but probably not by much. Where are you at?
Yeah, it's tough to bid against that number. I'm going to say 175, 470. I think I will not be surprised if this car goes north of that. There just aren't many of these. Pete, what do you think the number is going to be?
As we were discussing on the way into this, I was thinking, I could see in this market, Bring a Trailer crowd 150 pretty easily for this car. I think Michael makes a good point. If it's sitting 133, and how long is it to go? A day, 2 days?
Tomorrow closes tomorrow in the middle of the day.
I'm going to go a little under at 170, but I can see Bring a Trailer bringing that home, and I don't doubt your bid, Deep. That's where I'm going to go.
Yeah, and I'm throwing love. This is my friend that's selling the car. Yeah.
I was going to say 165, but the two of you with your 170 and 180 have me. 175, 180 have me.
Well, I mean, it would have been better for me if you went 165 because I've got a pretty narrow window to get this one right. Deeb's got the way over and you've got the under, so I'm kind of screwed. Too late, you're in.
I'll go for 165. There it is.
Are we letting him change his bid?
No. Pete Stout, you get all the real estate underneath you. You're in a good position to win this one. But I think the real winner is going to be Sebastian tomorrow. Even if the car only makes 165, I still think that would be a new high watermark for the model. And Sebastian, I'm sure, or relatively confident that number, like 165, would put a smile on his face. So we wish him well. It should be a fun one to watch because I do think the car is getting a lot of attention. So, Pete, if you're in the office and you're bored.
It may well blow us all out of the water.
It could.
It's really hard to know without a lot of comps. And the car is a desirable color combo, and the other side is it's a driver. If I'm not mistaken, I think I've seen this car in a rally, and it turned out well. I seem to recall seeing you guys several times, and it's a driven car, and there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
Pete,
absolutely.
The Nerd Herd is pretty bullish on this car. We've got bids. Mauricio's up at like 203,000. He thinks he's going to break 200. But Carbine's at 185. There's a bunch of bids in the kind of $150 range.
I see 185.
Ross Church House 183.5. Yeah.
Yeah, Mauricio's in Seattle. Carbine's in New Orleans. Ross is in New Zealand. I mean, we've got people all over the world bidding on this car. That's really cool.
And shout out to our good friend Ross, the OG Nerd Herd member. Apparently, he finally got his care package from Rochelle at GYX Customs. So he got his bid nerd shirt. He got his hat with his name on it. I don't know what else he got in there, yeah, so if you guys in the Nerd Herd are looking to get yourself your own Nerd Herd t-shirt or bid nerd hat like this one or the one I'm wearing where the logo's to the side, you can get one with your name on it right now at GYXcustoms.etsy.com. That's GYXcustoms.etsy.com. She is taking orders tonight. And like I said, if you order tonight, if you get in that first run, you're going to get hats that actually have your name on the hat. How badass is that? And you'll get a very, very, very limited edition Nerd Herd shirt. She's basically printing a handful of them at once for that first batch. So these are the early days. So get in while you can. Buy the dip, right? All right, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of this 491, 470, 87, 9? That's a lot of numbers. 911.
Right?
Is it going to bring the big money on BAT? We certainly are hoping so for our friend. Let's move on to the next car, Michael Deeb.
All right, this one we're gonna have a little more fun with. Basically what we're looking at here, also on Bring a Trailer, Pete, is a 1982 Porsche 911 SC. This is a coupe that somebody took the car, actually our friend Shoddy, who hangs out at the Easy and is part of the R Group. You may have met him
part
a
of
time
Three
or two.
Pedal Posse with Mauricio.
And so Shoddy took this 82 and put on basically like a turbo look cook, right? So he put the turbo fenders front and rear, and then did sort of an IROC conversion by taking away the rocker panels, putting on the big front oil cooler in the front with the IROC front end, and then the big oversized IROC rear end. It's got the Group 4 Campagnolo knockoff wheels in gold, which is a beautiful contrast. And then they took a 3.6 liter motor and built it to a twin plug 3.8 to give the car, instead of just having the bark, this car also has the bite. And so really neat car. Last year, Pete, Shoddy put the car on Bring a Trailer in July of 2023 and did it through one of Bring a Trailer's arguably their most impressive seller, 911R, which goes by, which is their handle, and that's Avant-Garde from Portland, Oregon, which now has offices in Arizona. So the car went to Scottsdale, Arizona for photography. 911R represented the car on Bring a Trailer in July of last year, and inexplicably, our car hammered at $92,500, where it failed to sell by a long way on just 17 bids. A couple of months later, Shoddy brought the car back to market again through 911R out of Scottsdale, Arizona. So it was in October of last year, and using the exact same photography, the same assets, and the same written copy, they simply ran the exact same car for a second time. Only this time, JP and I covered it on Bid Nerds, and we think that's the reason why when it hammered, it was at $160,000 where it sold on 44 bids, more than twice as many bids. So the new owner of the car has owned it since October. In April, he will have owned it for 6 months. So he hasn't even had the car a half a year. The car is in Los Angeles, and it has come back to market with, again, through a company called Sandbox Motors that I am not familiar with. They are taking the car on consignment and representing the car for the owner in Southern California back on Bring a Trailer. So for the third time in just like 8 months, this car is coming back to market with two very different results in its history. But nothing has changed, and the mileage is essentially the same. What's going on here, and I did just a teeny bit of research, JP, this seller is getting killed in the comments. They're asking questions like, hey, the donor 3.6 liter motor, was it a 964 or a 993? And Sandbox is maintaining that it's a 993 motor and talking about the Vario RAM. And all of the BAT peanut gallery are chiming in and saying, that's not true. It's a 964 block that was the donor motor. So right off the bat, the consignor, I think, is having a hard time representing the car because they don't think they're intimately familiar with it enough to do a good job of answering the litany of questions that comes with listing a car, especially for the third time on Bring a Trailer. I think they thought they could simply direct people to all the information that was provided when the car ran previously by 911R, and that isn't going so well for him. So this car is scheduled to close tomorrow, and it's sitting at just $65,000. Now, we're not getting into the numbers per se, but I just think that where it's sitting right now is indicative of the problems it's having, and it doesn't look good right now that this guy has any chance of recovering his $160,000, even though most of the commentary and the observation is that the car has been received very well. Everybody likes it, but when they ask questions, Sandbox seems to be stepping on their own shoes and they can't get out of their own way. So JP, I pushed this entire mess, this soup sandwich, over to you. Poor photography when you have to know that you're running as an alumni, you're going to get the listings in red, hyperlinks in your first paragraph. And when your photography isn't as good as the photography that it took to buy it, I think you're starting on the wrong foot. So JP, take it from there. What do you see is going on? Because the photos you're showing us are not the photos of the current listing.
Yeah, I went back and clicked on the listing from 911R, and I couldn't agree with you more. Look, these guys just look like flippers. And, okay, it's, they bought the car. That's the business. People trade in these things. That's fine. I don't think people really have that big a problem with that concept if they represent themselves as true enthusiasts and lovers of the brand and lovers of, this world that we all live in here. And if you're just like buying the car and then slapping it down with some cell phone photos when it was sold before with these amazing photos, you gotta step up. If it was a regular person who had bought the car, and drove it for a while and was actually an enthusiast. Maybe they drove it for a year and a half, and then they went to sell it and just took ho-hum photos. They can get away with that because they were someone who bought the car because they loved it, not because they were in the business. But just snapping some iPhone snaps and trying to just flip it again when everyone's going to know the car. Pete, what do you think is going on here?
Yeah, Pete, how important is photography?
Yeah, right.
Oh, well, I mean, photography is huge, and we've seen that with bat listings and others. 911R, Avant-Garde clearly raised the game on Bring It Chiller. It wasn't that there weren't any others that were doing good photography, but I remember as that company got going, these are serious shoots. I mean, some of those shoots exceeded things that I'd seen in pretty serious magazine endeavors, as well as full flight auction house photography. So, Avant-Garde and 911R were really pushing the limits and exceeding them, frankly, when it came to photo assets and presentation of cars. And you'd see results in the bids. I mean, it wasn't that the cars in many cases weren't good cars or desirable cars. It's just those photos clearly dazzled that audience. And you saw it on a car after car after car. And there were a lot of cars that didn't sell, but the bids were strong. And I think, man, that was an extraordinary bid, and it still didn't sell. So I think there's kind of two things going on here. First of all, there's the previous two auctions, and one a bad result, one a good result. But I think, as some of the comments have been made, I can't agree more that there's a bad look here. There's a question mark around, okay, and it's back up for sale just 6 months later. And as you guys have noted, the photography isn't. I mean, that's a high bar. The photos that we were looking at a moment ago, that's a very high bar for any auction site. But these are more in line with what you might expect for a flipper, as someone said. And the problem here is the car's only been with the current owner. They paid $160 for this car, which is a lot of money for a hot rod. And I like hot rods. And there's the old logic of you couldn't build it for that. And that might be accurate. Go find an impact bumper car, go find a good solid SC, and try to replicate IROC look, new paint, interior, those wheels, suspension, and a 3.8 twin plug, and you're way past 160, and you're way past, you're going to be waiting a while. So there's that. But I think bidders are going to have questions of why only 6 months. What's wrong? The problem becomes whether right or wrong, fair or not. The question is, what's wrong with it?
Well, and I think that's the inherent problem is that, I mean, given that it's a dealership, there's probably nothing wrong with it. It's just straight up someone's trying to take advantage of the market. And I think we see time and time again when people are exposed as straight up flippers, the community does not like that. I mean, we've seen it with these, we saw it a lot in the last year or so when all these cars like GT3s and even like the little Honda Civic Si sport versions or whatever that they had that are limited editions. People would they'd get an allocation for one of those cars. They'd go get it and immediately throw it online. And a lot of times you could see they would have their original, what's the sheet that has all the original prices on it? What's that? The Monroney or something like that? Yeah, the Monroney sheet or whatever. And, they'd try to cover it up and then they'd screw up and they'd be in another picture. But yeah, I mean, the community just hammers flippers on here. You just can't get away with it.
Especially if the seller isn't familiar with the build and there's questions around 964 or 993 crankcase and the answers look wobbly, or you see this on Bring a Trailer and other places again and again where the peanut gallery, especially a frequent flyer or even a car it's been sold quite a ways in the past, they're ready. That community's got the receipts and they'll go back. And it's also in many cases, I mean, sometimes it's not right, but sometimes you have people who really are eagle-eyed, and whether it's documented there or somewhere else, or people dig it up on a forum, the seller needs to know and be authoritative on that, or admit and be honest and admit when they don't, which also the community I've seen, that's okay. That's a lot better than getting it wrong.
Yeah, if they were just like, hey, we're a dealer, we saw an opportunity, we love this car, we thought it was undervalued, so we grabbed it, and honestly, we don't know as much as you guys, and we're learning as we go along. And luckily, you could see the old ad right here. I mean, the people that are asking these questions, and I appreciate them for kind of shaking out the flippers and making sure that things are legit. But let's face it, a lot of these folks are they're low status folks, and they know the answer to the question. They're not asking because they want to know because they're potential bidders. They just want to show off that, the bolt that came from the thing. It's like, okay, yes, we get it. You know something, and no other part of your life do you know anything. We understand. So yeah, what all this said, what does this mean for the end result of this auction? Michael D., what do you think this thing will be bid to, and will it sell?
That's a good question, JP. So our car is currently sitting at $65,000 on just, wait for it, 6 bids. So it is not getting a lot of action. Now, we know that Porsches do really well on the last day, and oftentimes we see cars basically bring 100% more money before, with a day to go on the final day. So with that in mind, this car theoretically could bring $130,000. I'm just not sure it's going to get to even there. I do think they'll do better than the first time it ran with Shoddy at $92,000, but I do not think they're going to come anywhere near close to the money that the person who's ultimately selling this car paid for it just 4 months ago. So I'm going to give you $118,930, and I'll send it to you, JP. But I'm going to tell you right now, if it hammers at 118,930, I think it fails to sell. I think this guy's got a firm grip on this car, and I don't know what he's going to do. I think he's just got to learn to love it, because I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, we can all see the results from the last auction just a couple of days ago. I mean, it's more than a couple of days ago. But look, if you're someone who's genuinely interested in this car, and maybe you'd pay $130,000 for it, or even $150,000, which I actually think it's worth, because like Pete said, you ain't building one for this. And if you're a hot rod guy and you want that car, if you want one from Flying Hawaiian or a big name builder, you're going to pay a lot more. Okay, $150, great, super. But that person that has $150,000 that would stroke that check, probably not even going to bother bidding, because they're going to know, or at least assume, that the reserve is somewhere close to what the seller bought it for, which you can see what that number is. So they're not even, they're checked out. They're looking at that, they're looking at the M491 car that we just talked about. I just don't think people are going to even pay attention to this, because what's the point? If it were no reserve, that's the only chance that I think this seller would have in actually getting the number that they need. Pete, what do you think?
Well, John, what was your number?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I need to throw it. I don't think it's going to break 100, but I'm going to go $99,911.
Oh, clever. I see what you did there with the 911.
With the nines and the nines, that there weren't any room for zeros.
And here I thought 118,000 was awfully precise.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. Miss Chloe over here.
I got to also say it's an interesting comp that you bring up with the 491 car, in terms of if the prediction's there anywhere near, if it's 160 to 180 and maybe higher, these get interesting, because they're both impact bumper, wide body cars. And you can say one that's a bit of an IROC look car, or it's a hot rod, and it's a 3.8 versus a 3.2. And there's a lot of things that aren't comps. But if you think about the buyer profile, the money is pretty similar, that we're talking about what you expect reserve to be and what it last sold for. And it gets interesting from a perspective of a buyer, because they can look at that white car and say, okay, that's a factory car. That's a rare car, whereas the other is a hot rod. And again, I like hot rods. But once you start to get into 6 figures and well into 6 figures, it's just a different mindset. So then you have to find exactly that buyer for that modded car. They need to want a black car. They need to want a car on gold wheels. They need to want a car with 3.8 and that bodywork and that interior. So 118 or 99,911 was our bids.
We don't go change, because they don't allow them to do change on the.
How do I beat that for precision?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's unlikely I'm going to get a Yahtzee. Yeah.
I'm working through the likely cubic centimeters of the 3.7 and change liter, but I think too that car is going to have a tough time breaking into six figures, not because of the car one way or the other, but because of the progression that's already back up for sale.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with 85,000 and no sale.
FTS, yeah. Look, the nerd herd is in agreement with you. A lot of people are saying that it's probably not going to break it. Almost everyone in the nerd herd is going, yeah, it's going to FTS. No one in the nerd herd thinks that it's going to get anywhere near what it did before, and which means everyone knows this thing is DOA. This thing is a dead on arrival car. Look, I do want to bring up, since I'm the one that brought up the 470 or 491 comp, and you're kind of talking about, Pete, the buyer profile. And I think what it comes down to, or another way to look at it from that buyer profile is, do you want blue chip collectible car? Like the 491 car is definitely the more collectible, always going to be a bigger audience for that. That is a car that someone is always going to want. When it comes to hot rods, there's a lot of different ways to kind of look at your hot rod purchase, right? Like I'm looking at that car going, all right, or these two cars, 491 or this hot rod around the same price. Do you want collectible that's really nice, or do you want performance? Because that 3.8 is going to rip. That car is a lot lighter than the 491 car. It's got the fiberglass bumpers and everything. I mean, that car is, I haven't driven it. But I did talk to, we know Shoddy, we know Mauricio, we know that 3-pedal posse crew. We know that they put together fun cars and stuff. The transmission arguably better in the 491 car because it's a G50, but that's heavier. It's 100 pounds heavier. There's a lot of ups and downs here. Do you want the performance and that hipster kind of hot rod look, or do you want the collector thing? And which side of that? I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think that that's kind of how you wind up one side or the other. Performance or collectability.
If you get two bidders in the room, as it were, with regards to that black car, and they both recognize how long it would take them to replicate that car and what it would cost them,
time and money.
Wrong. It could blow the doors off of any of our predictions and be 180 and out the door. If it's one or two people who can look past the question mark or get a satisfactory answer on why it's already back up for sale.
Yeah.
So you just never know on that. But it's interesting you mentioned the white car again from a different perspective, and that is that white car isn't perfectly stock either. It's got a little bit of suspension to it. Yeah. Kind of RSR finished wheels and a few little tweaks here and there. And I think there's a key difference there. Somebody's had a little fun with it. Michael, I seem to recall you also had a little fun with one of these turbo look cars.
Yeah.
It's sold now with a mutual friend of ours.
Yeah,
and
Stefan.
So I think the deal there, though, is that kind of fun is reversible. It's very hard to envision a scenario in which that black car is returned to the SC.
Oh, no. Yeah,
never.
It's not. It has nothing. That car is. Anyone who considers buying that car is never going, oh, how can I bring this back to stock? I mean, that's just not even in the cards. I always say on the show over and over and over again is the engine sells. Like if that car were, because what year is it? I'm sorry, it was a 79 or something.
82.
It's an 82. So it's an 82 SC. If it were just an 82 SC with a stock powertrain and it looked the same as that, the car's, whatever, you're going to get 70, 80 grand or something like that for it. But the fact that it has that engine will cost you $100,000 easy these days. That's where the value proposition comes in. Okay. I could either buy a car and try to make it look like this and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, or I can it's always better to buy something that's built already that somebody already ate up. But, what do you guys think this car will bring? Will Shoddy's car bring the big money the third time around? Is a third bite at the apple the way to go? Or is this flipper just going to wind up in the tuna can with the rest of the tuna fish and your tuna fish sandwich? What did they say? You should... instead of they should put Star-Kissed, they should put the mayonnaise in the can, but then they're like, no, you should feed the mayonnaise to the tuna. That's a joke from an old movie. There's someone out in the comments that will understand that reference, and we're gonna move on to the last car of the night. What do we got left here, Michael Deeb? This one, I'm really waiting for Pete's opinion on this one. This is gonna be fun.
All right, Pete. So Pete, just a little context here. We love reviewing cars on PCAR Market because we love poking fun at them for how they operate their platform. Much like being in the room with a closer at a domestic car dealership, they really tried to strong arm you. So on PCAR Market, JP selected for us this legitimate one owner 1998 Porsche 993 Carrera 4 Cabriolet that the person who bought the car, the seller, once he got it in 1998, within the year, took it to GEMBALLA in Malibu and had them do, which is essentially a Turbo S body kit to his C4 cab. So you've got authentic metal turbo scoops in the rear fenders, and then you've got the whole turbo front valance and rear, and then you've got the GEMBALLA front lower lip and side rockers. The car was optioned with 18-inch hollow spoke wheels. The car was optioned with red painted brake calipers, and the car was optioned with a I want to say limited slip diff, but I don't know if that's possible on a C4. I read the whole thing, but it had some cool things. Motor sound package, not the digital sound processor, but an upgrade to the stereo system. The guy did tick a lot of boxes when he bought the car originally. And then accompanying the sale, JP, which I think is relevant here to legitimize what was done, is a letter from GEMBALLA stating that all the things that were done to the car by them in period, and it's literally signed by Heinz GEMBALLA himself. So I think, as much as I want to poke fun at this car as being like, somebody went and bought some, bolt-ons and just slapped it on at the Earl Scheib paint job. This guy probably paid a lot of money for the car and a lot of money for the conversion when you consider what the dollar was worth back in 1998. So some money was invested here, and good on you. And it's a Carfax certified one-owner car. And now this guy is selling his baby with 50,000 miles out of Southern California, where all this stuff transpired. This car is being sold out of where it lived in Malibu, California. So 50,000 miles on the odometer, a legit C4, and a legit GEMBALLA cosmetic build in period. Silver with, I can only call it, like, it looks to me, it's not quite can red, but it's equally as offensive to me. It's too bright. I'm more of a purist. Give me my red leather in ox blood, as we used to call it, or burgundy even. The red on the dash and the steering wheel, JP, is too much for me. And I just, aesthetically, the car does nothing for me, but I do get a kick at it that it was literally done at GEMBALLA and that it's a real one. Way to go, PCAR Market. You found another one. Just goes to show you, if you go to a big party, the best way to meet people is stand still and everybody will eventually come to you. John, I sent it back to you. Why did you pick this car? Did you just want to pick on PCAR Market with Pete Stout, or do you actually like this thing because you used to own a beautifully modified silver 993 Cabriolet that after 11 years you finally sold?
Yeah, I mean, I hope to God no one looked at mine and said, wow, that looks like a GEMBALLA. This to me is like a Star Wars prequel or something like that, or any Marvel movie these days. It's like, you started with something good, and this is... When I say it's like an RWB prequel. It's like they just took a good car and just completely buggered it up. I mean, what is the point of any of this? It'd be one thing if there was like a big old, if they put a turbo in there or a supercharger on the engine or whatever, but they did. Like, one thing about those air intakes on 993s that they don't go anywhere. So you're not adding any functionality by putting a hole in the fender. And then you're adding this crazy box rocker that doesn't even look like it lines up. That said, It's a convertible 993. Okay. They made it a wide body. That's cool. They didn't make any convertibles. Like, could you just pull the box rockers off this thing and make the wheels, like, paint them silver instead of the chrome? And would it just look like a regular old kind of wide body C4S? Would that be enough to help it? Pete, what do you think of this thing?
Well, the first thing is, there's a lot of scoops. There's a lot of holes.
Yeah.
It's almost like
Tentacle
the 90s.
Porn.
There's you look at this. I realize there's almost like a continuity. There's a lot of intakes in that front bumper. There's sort of stacked double intakes. There's the lower turbo front bumper, and then there's the sort of semi-ubiquitous fog light scoops. So you got double scoops there, four of them, and then you got double scoops down the sides. I am not a huge fan of the 993 Turbo S side scoops. There's a lot of people who love them. I prefer the simpler fenders anyway, but those side skirts are not for me. Let's just say I'll go. I'm with Deeb on. I really do love Oxblood versus like a bright and strong red. But I'm also maybe an odd one out. I really like the Boxster red leather with Arctic silver, which was a pretty rarely chosen option on a 993, and can look incredible. Also can look great in an early 996. This car, I mean, it's gathered leather, and I don't know if you know too much about the gathered leather cars.
That would be called ballsack leather, just for the fans of the show.
Well, too bad your daughter.
They charged extra for it, but it was actually less expensive to make because it's actually difficult to make leather tight and even in surface. So it was one of the great Porsche marketing maneuvers there.
Right.
This car. Okay, there is the if you're into the GEMBALLA thing, there is the cool factor of it was done in period and it was done in LA. I see also a leather tonneau cover, which is new for me. I'm used to canvas. This one's a tough one for me. It's not my sort of car. There were I wish Alex was on this call with us or on this show with us because I don't know how well it's known, and maybe one or both of you will know this, but there was a dealership in Southern California that converted a bunch of Carrera Cabrios into Carrera 4S or Carrera S Cabrios in period. I think they were all Carrera S conversions.
Right.
And a friend of mine up here in Northern California ended up buying one of those. It was the Arena Red car. Alex knew every single one of them. He knew all five or however many colors there were. And I think there was one each in each color, something like that. And a friend bought the Arena Red car and had it converted to a Speedster. And I've driven that car and it's fantastic.
Oh, I saw that car. I saw that car in Calistoga.
It drives so well. It's got all the right mods. It drives really, the suspension's dialed, the exhaust is dialed, like shifter's dialed. Like it's a master class in when hot rods can be good. And that's certainly not a guaranteed result. And this is as a driver of a hot rod. That car is really cohesive. But what I was surprised to find was I thought, a dealer did the work. It's probably done right. Well, it's a pretty invasive thing to change one of these 993 Cabrios into a wide body. And according to the people who redid that Speedster anyway, the rear bodywork commissioned by and or carried out by the dealer was not very well done. Oh, wow. So that's a question mark I'd want to get up in under those rear fenders and take a look at, okay, what's the welding like? What's the work like? Now, my guess is that at that company's prices, you would expect pretty good work. And when it's new, you don't have to worry about rust or you're not worried about it. Everything's still relatively fresh. So it really comes down to, do you want one of those? Can you detach those side skirts and replace them with standard side skirts? I'm with you on painting the wheels back to Arctic silver to match the rest of the car, or possibly the black finish with the Arctic silver ring around, so it's not all black. That was a factory option. This car needs a little. There might be something to gather there, but it's not one for me. I don't think it's not more compelling than a stock 993 Carrera 4 Cabrio or Carrera Cabrio for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. I think the fact that it's wide is the only thing that is interesting to me. I mean, so Pete, I'm a big cabrio guy. I prefer convertibles. I know I'm in the rarity there, but regardless of that, if you like convertibles, look, I would rather have it be a white car, and you can't get one. So I actually kind of look at this thing and go, all right, maybe we can pull those box rockers off, and maybe we can change the front lip, and now we'll have something that's kind of interesting. There's nothing you can really do about the holes in the fenders. I'm not going to bother redoing the body work to plug them up, even though we know that they just kind of go to the frame, so you're just adding drag. It's just like an RWB. Just add a bunch of junk to the car, add drag, don't add any power.
Charge more money.
Yeah, charge more money. At least we know that this car probably took more than 3 days and 16 packs of cigarettes, to finish. And 42 pounds of caulking from Home Depot.
JP, know that you're not alone in your affinity for 993 cabs. There are a number of folks in Weissach who are in all sorts of positions within Porsche on the engineering side who have 993s, and they meet up regularly. And a number of them have cabs and love them. Yeah. And one of them's kind of a hardcore guy and into the GT stuff. And he was giving me a hard time about my base Carrera, my 991.2 C2. He's like, "Oh, you drive only a base car?" And I was like, "Wait, don't you have a 993 C2 cab? Like where are you throwing rocks from?" But the reality is, like, it's a convertible. It's almost like we're not supposed to admit we like convertibles, and it used to be, that was the premium car, and 356
still is from a price point of view. Porsche still charges more for the drop tops.
But on the used market, is that fair?
Correct. Totally understood. Yeah.
It almost inverts, but the reality is, I've had some great drives in cabs over the years. If it's right road, right everything, and I mean, it's just, you're out there, and that Speedster I mentioned, a big part of what made it brilliant was the fact that it had those nacelles, those double humps, and it was almost as though it had an FD a Pfister exhaust that was really, really well judged. It was almost like it was piping back to your ear, and you wouldn't have had that had you had that glass. I like a coupe. I like a 911 coupe. I prefer my convertibles as two-seaters, so I typically like Boxsters and 914s if I'm going to go convertible. Yeah. But I've had some great drives in 911 cabrios over the years. Really, really good ones.
I'll give you my quick theory. I'm going to do the quick theory because Pete from 000, he's got to hear this. He's going to do a whole article, the whole next magazine is going to be about this theory. You're either a dog person or a cat person, right? Are you a dog person or a cat person? It's not whether
convertibles, sticker, PDK, normally aspirated or turbo. But you know what happens in my experience? A lot of people, by self-selecting on those, have self-selected themselves out of a lot of fun.
Well, so that's part of my point is that, a cat, when I say one car is like a coupe, or one car, like the cabs basically are for dog people. And coupes are for cat people, because cats like to kind of confine themselves in tight little spaces, and they don't like to see the world. They don't like people. They just want to be in their own space. Boom, there it is, right? Yeah. Dogs, on the other hand, you put them in a car, the first thing they want to do is stick their head out the window. They like nothing but their people or their best friends. They're the happier. They're just having a good time all the time, and they eat poop. So I tend to be more like a dog person. But here's the real point: is that when you talk to most people who prefer coupes over cabs or coupes over convertibles, very nice, good, nice job. Most people who prefer coupes hate cabs, whereas people that prefer cabs love both. Yes, because you're more of a dog person.
Of this show, I've had a cat in one chair and a dog at my feet. So it's like you don't have to choose.
Exactly. Right. All right. This guy's okay in my book. All that said, it's time to get some predictions. What do we think this car will bring, guys?
Again, JP, our car closes tomorrow. So on PCAR Market is a 1998, a one-owner 1998 Porsche 993 C4 cab with a GEMBALLA conversion to a turbo convertible, turbo body kit convertible by GEMBALLA. 50,000 miles and out of Malibu, California. JP, our car is sitting at $45,000 on just 6 bids, and it closes tomorrow. Listen, the The average selling price for a 993 C4 cab is $66,000. I think this car is going to do a little better than that, but I don't think somebody's going to pay six figures for a GEMBALLA, no matter no matter how low the miles are or anything like that. Good provenance, one owner, fair miles, fair condition, but I don't think anybody's going to pay through the nose. So if 66 is the average price for one, I think this car could reasonably expect to hit $75,000. Now, if it hits $75,000, it's anybody's guess if it's going to sell for that number. I have no idea what the seller is expecting here, but I'll give you 75 grand at hammer, JP. Sell or no sale, we'll leave that to be determined later. But $75,000 for this car tomorrow. What do you say?
I'm going to go to 69,993 and say that this car slimes its way right into the chum bucket where the owner will be asking a buy it now price at like 150. So I'm giving you
125.
Yeah. So this car is DOA. There's no way. P-car market, we know that those guys accept pretty much any car that comes across their desk, and they don't
sign,
right, and or knock off whatever. And we know that they just don't care what the reserve is because they know that at the end of the auction they're going to have 3 or 4 slime balls calling the top bidders, trying to get them to up their bid after the thing fails to sell, and they're going to have 1 slime ball calling the owner, trying to get him to lower the sale. They just want a shot at a commission, and they don't have a shot at something if it's not listed on their site. I have a very poor opinion of P-car market. If you haven't figured that out, Pete, what do you think this thing will bring or fail to bring?
What do you think the hammer is going to be, Pete?
I'm split in the middle of you two. I think it's 72.
Wow.
Failed to sell. I don't think it's going to sell at 72, but I think that'll be kind of if I had to take a guess, that's where I see bids going. Looking at the last photo you had of the car up, it's a presentation matter. It might have been to someone's taste at the time and they got their dream car. I suspect that now that car would sell a lot better if it had a black tonneau cover, standard side skirts, maybe silver wheels in the front lowered a little bit. I think that would broaden its market appeal. This car was built to someone's taste, and I'm not sure the market's going to agree with that. So I'm going to go with, and silver chrome wheels is a tricky one. I think the side skirts are trickier. I just don't think those have aged well. I want those in a box to go with the car and the documentation. So somebody else wants them, they can almost put them back in to return it to 1998 ECH. So I suspect I'm going with 72, which only sounds like reasonable bid when you think about what 70 will buy you in an impact bumper car these days. Then it's pretty compelling. So I don't think either are you too far off, 70, 75.
Yeah, it probably drives great. I mean,
I don't see the owner letting go of it for that. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a zoot suit. I think you're right. It's period correct, but that period ain't good, man. Limp Bizkit CD is jammed in the CD player. You can't get. It's just stuck in there, and it's like only playing half a song over and over again. This car. It's too bad because it probably does drive really nice, and maybe we're wrong, and maybe the person is the seller is reasonable, and the price will. Who am I kidding? It's P-car market. All right.
Well, and this is one of those tricky situations too, where online bidding can be tricky because let's say that the bodywork is done really, really well, unlike my friend's car, from what I understood from the company that converted it to a speedster anyway. What's that worth? If the level of those rear fenders, if those are factory parts purchased in the late 90s and added well, what's that worth? I mean, side skirts are easy. Rear quarter panels in silver.
Yeah.
Not easy.
Yeah. They said metal, but I don't recall them saying original equipment. So it's interesting. And,
it was done by GEMBALLA, though, wasn't it? I mean, didn't GEMBALLA only use original stuff? I mean, who knows?
Sure. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing, though, too. Oddly enough, 90s stuff like this isn't really that cool, but could you... Like, if you did take those box rockers off, don't throw them away. Put them on a shelf because there's someone out there that does want this thing. I mean, this thing would be awesome at Radwood, and there is a guy that wants to be that cool guy at Radwood and doesn't care.
I mean,
you'd buy this car just for that.
JP, you might have just increased the market for that vehicle immeasurably. You know, so somebody can convert it. They can put the leather tonneau on those side skirts and those wheels and raise the front. Just throw some spring spacers in, and they're shooing for Radwood. And they can convert it back to black tonneau, stock side skirts and some other wheels in, I don't know, 15 minutes, hour.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
just there is like 10 or 11 pages of Carfax. This car has been serviced at Porsche of Beverly Hills its entire life. It's impressive. For 50,000 miles and 25 years, this car has been consistently looked after. So, you know, while to taste it might be polarizing and not for everyone, it is unreasonably consistent. Like this is the car you'd want to buy from underneath. You know what I mean? It's been really well looked after.
Oh, I'm so with Kevin in the comments on I'd take a DP.
yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? I mean, for sure.
I was just with Alan and the folks at SWEC in Florida, and DPs were on my mind in Miami. I mean, it's
yeah.
So is
this going to be a DP in another 20 years? I
don't think so. Yeah, I think it would already be there. That's the thing about sensibilities from specific time periods. You know, some people think they're cool, and then stuff goes out of fashion. You know, like slant noses. We see a ton of slant noses. Those are kind of coming back from a kitschy point of view. If it's an original slant nose, obviously that has something. But there's so many plasticky, crappy slant noses that, you know, really good cars were ruined. And now it's the RWB scourge that's kind of doing the same thing, taking perfectly good cars and, you know, ruining them. And, you know, again, I'm not a purist. I like hot rods. I'm all for modding your car, but there's some stuff, if you're not adding performance, if you're not lowering the weight, it's like, really, you got to start asking yourself some questions. And I think some people just want Instagram cred more than anything else. But
yeah, listen,
but part of this thing is being able to pick out diamonds in the rough, right? And so you mentioned something, cars always been serviced at Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
I'd want to get under those fenders and see what the quality of the work is back there. But let's say it was done well. Let's say the paint's good. And always serviced at Beverly Hills. If it was serviced by the right people, how does it drive? You know, we're all, you know, looking at the aesthetics. Well, front bumpers and valences are pretty easy to change. Wheels are really easy to change. Not necessarily cheap, but what's the value of a car with an unbroken chain of ownership and service? And it's really tempting to I'll claim, you know, I'm guilty of it. We'll look at all the aesthetics, and you should, you know, that this gets back to my comment of, has the seller missed the mark with the presentation on this, where if they had just modernized the car a little bit, made it a little bit wider appeal, and then really played up the service history.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors. We will see in just a couple days what the results of this GEMBALLA 993 Cabrio are. Let us know what you think will happen with this car's auction results in the comments below. And with that, we are running up to the end of a live episode of Bid Nerds with our very special guest, Pete Stout from 000 Magazine. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, Pete.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been really fun to watch the comments. Thanks everybody for chiming in. I've gotten a few kicks. I've done my best to keep a reasonably straight face on some of those comments, but appreciated them. I see someone threw a shoe at Fred during a Limp Bizkit concert that they were at, like that. I mean, I'm having fun with those comments. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, the Nerd Herd really makes the show fun. We about a year ago we switched the live format, and it's just kicked it up a notch.
Well, and Ross with 65K UGG, those wheels, I can see these are my people.
Yeah, totally. Pete, thank you so much for risking career and reputation by slumming it with us. We loved having you on, and really appreciate you coming on here and playing the game with us.
Thanks for having
me
on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, Pete, is there anything you want to plug? Where can we get 000 magazine if we don't already have it already? And what can we look forward to in future episodes other than an article about bid nerds?
Beautiful website. The 000 magazine is a mirror image of the magazine itself. It is first class.
Oh, well, thank you. Again, a lot of people working on that. You can find us at 000magazine.com. And I encourage people to check out some of the other content, Pikes Peak stuff or Rare Shades, whatever, some of those initiatives. And we're cranking along on issue 29. There's some good stuff in store. I'm thrilled that we're working on 29.
That's awesome.
Starting with 0 back in 2016. So it was a kind of a moonshot when we took a stab at doing this in print. And we're thankful for everybody who's supported us along the way.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Rebecca. Yeah.
Michael D.
Yeah, there's a reason we call her the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Behind every
creatives in check, and I'm thrilled, and she's thrilled. The team has doubled this last year, and so we're really thankful for that.
Yeah, behind every good man is a great woman. Yeah, so you can find me at mdeeb@haggerty.com. If you have an interesting car that you would like to sell, I'd be happy to work with you. We are taking consignments for a Porsche, a Broad Arrow Group Porsche only sale, 1-day sale, about 70 cars, in conjunction with Luftgekolt's Air and Water Show on Saturday, April 27th. So we are looking at consignments right now. If you have an interesting Porsche, something that is among the best of the breed, reach out to me and let's see if we can get your car into a live auction and get you some free drink tickets.
New films on Der Fascination, our YouTube channel over there. In fact, the film that just published this week is the film about my partner, Michael Deeb, and his RSA tragedy on the crest. So check that one out. We got great films about Rod Emory and his son Zane. We've got lots of fresh films on there that were all part of the TV show that was on Pluto from the Porsche Road Trip, now available on Der Fascination. And then, of course, you can always watch episodes of Bid Nerds anytime you like. They're all there. There's 100 or more. There's at least a couple hundred of them. So thank you guys in the Nerd Herd so much for hanging out. Pete, we're all done. Partner, Michael Deeb.
Thank you.
We will see you guys on the next episode. Oh, hey, before we go, if you haven't hit the subscribe, do it now. If you haven't hit the thumbs up, do it now. Come on, it's your last chance. We're almost done.
Gotta do it.
Yeah, please.
See you guys.
All right, gentlemen.